asa n'ọrụ onye ọbụla akpọrọ nwere oge
Hello everybody. Once again, this is Fred Wankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bold Talk on Island TV. As usual, I like to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, depending on where you are around the world. This edition today is a follow-up to the last episode I did, and it's to reinforce certain things that were either shown or said in that video from a factual, historical perspective. And I'll start it out and end it the same way. If you are in doubt, go and ask Pa Adebanjo. Regarding Nigeria, a little history will help. Distortion of stories and distortion of news reports only prolongs the day that Nigerians can sit down and say to themselves in earnest, fellow countrymen and women. I start out this way because of my last episode, in which one of the lead stories was a video that surfaced more or less out of Ibadan or your state, trying to rewrite the history and the facts about Nigeria. It wasn't surprising, not to me, and I'm sure it wasn't surprising to my viewers who saw it on my show or anybody who saw it elsewhere. That's what's been going on in Nigeria since 1967. News distortion to favor certain parts and diminish other parts. But we can't allow this to continue. That's why I thought I'll lead off this episode with a little historical perspective. And in this case, some of the perspective may go back to the 50s, but in the immediate lead off, it starts out from 2014. In 2014, there was a national conference in Nigeria, of which all regions, all 6 geopolitical regions in Nigeria participated. When I say things, I tell people that Bold Talk on Island TV does not lie. Bold Talk on Island TV brings out facts that Nigerians with an agenda would like to pretend don't exist and would like to challenge just to divert attention. At the conference I'm talking about in 2014, the Southwest was fully represented at that conference by Chief Olufalaye, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, and the Afenifere patrons and elders. The people present at that conference added their signature to what came out of that conference. It was unanimously approved at that conference and adopted by every segment of Nigeria that attended, that Nigeria needed, one, to be restructured, and as a preamble to that restructure, that southeastern Nigeria needed one additional state. The logic behind that is that every region in Nigeria has 6 states, except the Southeast that has 5 states. This discrepancy affects revenue, not to mention the fact that the regions where most of Nigeria's resources come from already have way more revenue, rightfully so, than the regions where the resources are not coming from. When President Buhari came in, because President Jonathan left before that, the determination at that conference was put into effect. When President Buhari came on, he did not follow through on that 2014 conference. Instead, he said it was a waste of time and a waste of resources. Folks, unless Nigeria goes back to the basics of the outcome of that summit in 2014, Nigeria will continue to build whatever new things they are building on shaky grounds. It's obvious to anybody who follows Nigerian politics that President Buhari came in with an agenda. On top of that agenda was religious bigotry. And followed on that agenda, following religious bigotry, was to minimize the influence of certain aspects of Nigeria. So far in 6 months, unfortunately, President Tinubu seems to be towing the same line of following an agenda that does not unite the people, instead divides the people even further from where President Buhari already left it. Yet, Nigerians expect that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will quickly get wiser and think more about his legacy than the selfish interest of maybe not him, but the bigots who surround him and the agenda they came to his office with. And for people who don't understand the history of Nigeria, and people who conveniently let their tribal prejudices and personal agendas guide the truth, there's been a lot of buzz about Ebos want to leave Nigeria, Ebos want Biafra, Ebos don't want to work with Nigeria, Ebos want to dominate Nigeria. Let's set the record straight. I strongly feel I speak the opinion of Ebos when I say that no, Ebos don't want to dominate anybody in Nigeria. Ebos just want to be treated fairly and equitably in Nigeria. With that said, if Nigeria is now willing to be fair and equitable in the treatment of every Nigerian, regardless of where they come from, and if Ebos continue to feel that they are being treated unfairly like a stepchild in a country they were founding members of and have contributed as much as anybody, if not more than anybody, then Ebos want to leave Nigeria. I hope you heard me clearly. Don't just leave with Ebos want to leave Nigeria. Listen to everything I said leading up to that. It's always good because history doesn't lie. There was a series of conferences that took place in the 50s in the United Kingdom called the Lancaster House conferences. At those conferences, the bane of the matter was whether Nigeria needed to be one country or whether Nigeria needed to be separate countries. The one person who stood out fighting to keep Nigeria one was Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe. It's on record. Bold talk doesn't lie. Bold talk brings out facts that make liars cringe and say, where did he get that fact? We need to find that fact, bury it, or distort it. But it cannot be buried. Facts are facts. It is also on record that the northern Nigeria, was the first to call for secession from Nigeria. The second region to call for secession away from Nigeria was the southwest region. It's on record. Let's not speculate. Let's follow history. Let's follow facts. The third section of Nigeria to ask for secession from Nigeria was the South-South, led by Adakaboro. The reason I mentioned Adakaboro, and I'm emphasizing that one, is that Adakaboro's call for secession from Nigeria by the Delta region came in 1966. Biafra did not leave Nigeria until 1967. And the Adakaboro secession threat was not lip service. He actually formed an army, he fought Nigeria, and it was about 4 weeks or 6 weeks later that the Aguiyi-Ironsi Nigerian army contained them. Adakaboro went on to fight on the Nigerian side during the Civil War and died under mysterious circumstances in 1968. He was barely 30 years old. In hindsight, regardless of who is right or wrong, all parties in Nigeria by now can see that mistakes were made on all sides. No side can walk away and say the war was fought because this person was wrong and that person was right. But let the record show that the war was fought because of injustices to a segment of Nigeria. The Southeast was the fourth region to ask to secede. And you ask yourself, why were they the ones who started a war? And in response to that, I'll ask you, besides feeling marginalized and all that, I'm talking about the North or the Southwest or the Delta region, besides the cries of injustice, were people from the Northwest or Southwest or Delta being pogromed? Were Yorubas being killed in Nigeria by non-Yorubas? Were Northerners being killed in Nigeria by non-Northerners? Were people from Delta being killed in Nigeria by non-Deltans? No. Those three regions asked for secession and were not allowed to secede while they continued to fight for fairness, which is the right thing to do. But Eastern Nigeria asked for secession when Ebos in the north especially started being massacred, not 10s and 20s, but thousands and hundreds of thousands of Ebos were being killed in the north, while the rest of the country looked the other way. And what was the crime of Ebos? A coup was held in January 1966 by military officers of the Nigerian Armed Forces. That coup, because of the agenda of the Fulani against the South, but especially against Ebos, that coup became dubbed an Igbo coup. When every record since 1967 until today has shown that every segment of Nigeria participated in that coup. Army officers of Yoruba extract, Igbo extract, Fulani extract, and Delta extract were involved in that coup. But it was dubbed an Igbo coup. And the Nigerian media went to press since the war until recently, continue to dub that coup an Igbo coup. Put yourself in the shoes of the Igbo man. And what's the crime of the Igbo man? He wants to do well. He wants to achieve. He wants to excel. Is that a crime? And tens and hundreds of Igbo military officers were pointed out and killed in northern Nigeria and western Nigeria. These are facts. I didn't say Yorubas killed them, but they were killed on western soil. Who gave the orders and who did the killing is a story for a different day. So if you say, why did Igbos fight the war? My response to you will be in Igbo adage that it's only a tree that you'll tell that you're coming to kill him, and he'll stand there waiting for you to come and cut him down. If Yorubas were being massacred in the north, or if people from the Delta were being massacred in the north, or if people from the north were being massacred in the southwest or southeast, would the north continue to stay in Nigeria to be massacred if the rest of Nigeria refused to come to their aid? That's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer it. It is food for thought. But with that said, there's been a lot of buzz about Igbos leave Lagos, Igbos go back home. And I'm not saying them telling Igbos, I'm saying us Igbos urging Igbos to leave. This brings me to the separation of emotion from reality. And I say to myself, why should Igbos leave Lagos? Why should Igbos leave Kaduna? Why should Igbos leave anywhere that anybody wants them to leave? And the reason I ask that question is, it will be time for Igbos to leave any of those regions when Nigerians go to a table and decide that it's no longer one Nigeria, and people in different regions have the right to tell fellow Nigerians to leave their region. That hasn't happened. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens, but it hasn't happened. And why would somebody who has acquired so much wealth in a certain part of the country abandon that wealth because somebody in that part of the country says, you have to leave, we don't want you here? I live in the United States with Yorubas and people from other parts of Nigeria, but Yoruba will be the largest population in comparison to Ebos that live in the United States. And we live in Chicago and Washington and Dallas and LA and Boston and Connecticut and Philadelphia and Detroit and Cleveland and on and on and on. A good number of those Yorubas have established significant, admirable businesses in the United States. And one of the things we enjoy in the United States is their democracy. And one of the things that many of us who are old enough to know when the National Conference was taking place, the Constitutional Conference, is that Nigeria adapted the United States style of democracy and not the British style of democracy. We celebrated it. But I'm sad and ashamed to say that many of those Yorubas who live in the United States have achieved tremendously in the United States are sitting back and at best saying nothing while the persecution of Ebos in Lagos goes on. Worse yet, some of those very educated, high-achieving Yorubas in the United States that enjoy all the freedoms that the United States has offered them are not ashamed to say, yes, Ebos need to leave Lagos. Yet, if I send out an invitation tomorrow, and I know who my Yoruba friends are that are open-minded, they know I'm not talking to them, I'm making general statements. But if I send out invitations tomorrow for my grandson's christening or my son's wedding, they will respond to my invitation and hug me, and everything will be hunky-dory. But behind my back, they support Ebos leave Lagos. When they make their list of invitees for their sons and daughters' weddings and christenings and graduations, they include me in their guest list. And when I walk in, they feed me, they dine me, they hug me, and they even introduce me to some of their friends as a great Igbo friend of theirs. I call that hypocrisy. I call that hypocrisy at the highest level you can find it. This brings me to the issue of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, which I mentioned in my last video. The courts in Nigeria have determined that Nnamdi Kanu needs to be set free. I hear some ordinary, honest Igbos fighting for Nnamdi Kanu's freedom. I barely hear a sound from highly placed Igbo people making loud noise, going on TV and talking loudly, damning the consequences. At best, you hear lip service here and there. Why is nobody calling for the release of this young man from prison for a crime the Nigerian courts have determined he did not commit? Why is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who celebrated the judgment by the Supreme Court and the judgment by the Court of Appeals that declared him president of Nigeria, right or wrong, we are no longer addressing that issue, but he celebrated those declarations. And on those notes, he felt that the Nigerian courts have done an excellent job. If the same courts who declared him president under highly questionable circumstances declared a Nigerian, a fellow Nigerian, to be released and made a free man, why is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu still holding Nnamdi Kanu in jail? Again, those are rhetorical questions. They are questions for every Nigerian to ponder as food for thought. An unjustly imprisoned Nigerian, regardless of which state they come from and which tribe they come from, is an assault on every Nigerian, and every Nigerian should treat it exactly for what it is, an assault on Nigerians and a threat to the unity of our country. Let me controversially conclude on this note. Ebos don't need to leave Lagos. Ebos don't need to leave any part of Nigeria. However, Ebos need to re-strategize. Starting tomorrow, while you invest in Lagos and Kaduna and Ibadan and Port Harcourt and Uyo and even Asaba, and on. Don't forget to take a fraction of what you are investing and divesting your investments to Igbo land. And for the Igbos who the services and products they provide in other parts of Nigeria, if those services and products can thrive headquartered in Igbo land, those Igbos should seriously consider moving those businesses completely to Igbo land. They should seriously consider selling everything they have in Lagos and Ibadan, Kaduna and all those places, and moving that money to establish things in Igbo land, and the rest of the money invested in things that are equally profitable but don't have to be physical property. This Nigeria is big enough for all of us. And there are more Nigerians that are progressive and against the wickedness of the Fulani cabal and the Bola Ahmed Tinubu cabal. Yoruba progressives are not in support of what's going on in Lagos. Fulani progressives are not in support of what the Fulani cabal is doing in Nigeria. The Hausas, the Edos, the progressive Hausas, the progressive Edos, Urobos, Efiks, Ibibios, Ijos, Calabaris, Igberes, name all the different parts of Nigeria and the tribes that come from there. The progressives among those people are against the atrocities that is going on in Nigeria. And Igbo the cabal-pocketed segment of Igbos are not any better than Tinubu's agenda and the cabal agenda against Igbos. So make a long story short, Igbos need to seek out who their friends are And the Ebos must understand that they are not in this by themselves. And it's the support of the progressives across Nigeria that will bring about a day when we look around and we say, this too has passed. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, this is Fred Nwankwo coming to you from our studios in Chicago with another edition of Bull Talk on Allen TV. And until next time, good night and God bless.
Ndababa aije kelende mwegu ndababa ndababa ndekaraka monki yeye ndekaraka anajari shugo muno tulaji kaikene Fred Nwankwo Ezudo Eze Nwankwo si ajalebia Publisher African Lifestyle Magazine Chicago Nwankwo ndị Chicago ji ejemba ndababa aije kele ndị nwe egwu ndababa ndababa ndị karaka monki yeye ndị karaka anajari shugo muno tulaji nde chimereze na Chicago ababa nekele akipa kwa kario akario kwa kipa fana bade ochano ekalano koya injina Bruno da Ochimkwela nuguru la no chacha konyo na koyao ndababa ndababa oh ndababa